again, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons. I'm your host, and I'm glad you're tuning in this week. So, even though the weather's supposed to be warm this week, it's supposed to be melty. Boy, walking in here this morning, Tuesday the 12th, town hall meeting day for many places outside of Manchester. But boy, it was Elm Street bitterly cold. That wind will get you. My fingertips are still trying to catch up. So hopefully, fingers crossed, temperatures will warm up and we'll melt some more of this snow, especially since it's that particularly ugly, dirty snow now. And we'll be on our way towards spring. For those of you who don't know, there is a parade, the St. Patrick's Parade, which isn't held on St. Patrick's Day. It's just the St. Patrick's Parade sometime around St. Patrick's. That'll be on March 30th this year. I'm sure there'll be more information in the newspaper and whatnot, and I'll talk about it in maybe next week a little bit more. But March 30th is Manchester's St. Patrick's Parade. So, daylight savings. Why? Why do we have daylight savings? Does anybody really know what the benefit of daylight savings and moving our clocks twice a year, one way or the other, is for today's world? There's always talk about they did it for the school buses, they did it for the farmers, they did it for energy savings during the energy crisis of the 70s. There's all these different, versions of how we got ourselves to daylight savings time. I know that just last week I was saying to Dan, God, it's nice to wake up in the morning and the sun's shining through the window and it's just a good, yay, get out of bed type thing. And he was like, yeah, but daylight savings, which, happened this past weekend. So now when I wake up, it's not sunshiny and bright. I guess I have more afternoon daylight, but it was daylight already when I was getting out of work. So I wish we'd just stop. If you have pets, they don't understand. They're like, why are we getting up early? Why aren't we eating at our normal time? It's just crazy. Now, I know in recent years, the last term up at the State House, Representative Keith Murphy from Bedford and Representative Carol McGuire from Epsom had a bill that would have said that if Massachusetts adopt, what is it called, Atlantic Standard Time, that New Hampshire would also adopt Atlantic Standard Time. This came out of committee. As you know, things have to get voted on in committee. They either get recommended to pass or to kill, and then they go on to the House for a full vote, and then they go over to the Senate. It came out of committee 14-4, so predominantly supported. It passed the State House, despite my own state rep, Tim Smith, attempting to table it. I don't know why. I mean, why do you like daylight savings time? I mean, I just don't get it. His motion to table failed, and the bill did pass the New Hampshire House, and then it went over to the Senate where it died 16-7. And it's not a partisan thing. It's not all Republicans or all Democrats, although for some reason the Democrats seem to want to halt the process more often. But for some reason people are just not willing to just take the chance and say, if Massachusetts does it, we'll do it. Because if we say that, then Massachusetts will say, well, New Hampshire will do it, so we'll do it. It's this vicious circle. So this year, there's a bill again to have New Hampshire become part of Atlantic Standard Time. This time around, the trigger would be if Massachusetts and Maine adopt it, New Hampshire will adopt it. Came out of committee again, 11-7 to pass. Not as strong as the first one. With Manchester's Jeff Goley and John Judy both voting on committee against moving us to Atlantic Standard Time. So for whatever reason, Jeff Goley and John Judy really like daylight savings time. It came out of the House on a division vote, which is one where we know the number, but we don't know the names, 208 to 120. And there was, again, another attempt to table this. I don't know why. This time it was from the Democratic Majority Leader, Doug Lay. So I don't know what the Democrats' thing is. First, Tim Smith did it a couple years ago, and now the Majority Leader attempt to table it this time around. That motion also failed. So 2/3 of the House seem to want to pass it. Now we're on over to the Senate, and we'll see what they'll do. Maybe they'll stop this crazy, spring forward, fall back, clock changing, screwing up everybody's internal clocks thing that we've been doing for years. So daylight savings time, just make it stop. So in the last couple weeks in my free time, I've been perusing the comprehensive annual report for the city of Manchester. Sounds like tons of fun, right? I actually wasn't doing it for fun. If I want to do things for fun, I have plenty of things in my life I could do that are much more enjoyable than reading the comprehensive annual report for the city of Manchester. But what got me to looking for this was I was trying to get some data together because last week I went to the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting last Tuesday, a week ago, to speak against Alderman Herbert's proposal that they put the repeal of the tax and spending caps on November's ballot. I went there, with a prepared statement, and I wanted to make sure that I had my facts correct and my ducks in a row. So I started looking into this report to find out what the property tax rates were, from year to year. Whether you realize or not, I know I say it often, but if you're just tuning in for the first time, perhaps, I was the coordinator for the collection of the signatures that got the tax and spending cap on the ballot in the first place. Little history, back in 2005, former Democratic State Rep Joel Winters and some other folks collected the necessary signatures to put the tax cap, actually, I believe at that point it might have just been, I think it was a tax cap, on the ballot in 2005. They got the number of signatures that they needed, but the Attorney General's office or the Department of Revenue Administration, one of the two of them, said that the language is flawed because they wanted one too many aldermen to be able to override. So the aldermen could have made the correction, put it on the ballot. They chose not to. In 2008, I was the coordinator with Mike Biondo and lots of good group of people who collected signatures in Manchester. I believe the magic number was 4,024. We collected like 6,000 signatures. Some of them aren't registered voters, some of them aren't from in Manchester, whatever. We got the requisite number of signatures. We had pre-approved the language through the Attorney General's office so that we had it correct so we wouldn't run into the same problem that they had in 2005. We had to sue the city because the aldermen refused to put it on the ballot in 2008 when we got the signatures. Ultimately, it ended up on 2009's ballot. And it did pass the spending and tax cap based on the prior year's consumer price index, which is basically the rate of inflation, passed. And interestingly enough, it passed in a year that they only elected one Republican alderman. So the voters in Manchester voted in everybody except for one Republican alderman as Democrats. I don't believe that there might have been one unregistered, undeclared alderman, but a predominant number of Democrats to the aldermanic board, while at the same time they passed the tax and spending cap that was said, we want you to restrain your spending growth to that of inflation. So now you might wonder, what was the impetus for this whole thing in the first place? It wasn't just for the fun of collecting signatures or talking to Manchester voters. The impetus was that from 2001 to 2005, Manchester property taxes increased 20.5%. That's huge. Now, when Mayor Baines was mayor during that time, in his last year, property taxes increased 8.4% in 1 year. That's nuts. So once the cap was in place, even though the aldermen can and have overridden the cap, we haven't seen tax increases anywhere near 8.4%. So even in the years that they override, the cap has served its purpose. It is restraining spending from growing faster than the rate of inflation. Your household income doesn't grow faster than the rate of inflation. You have to live within your means. The city should be expected to live within their means as well. So now the original language of the cap was to be based on the prior year's consumer price index. A few years later, then Alderman Garth Corriveau put an amendment on the ballot. The alderman moved it to put it on the ballot to make it the prior 3-year average. I think they thought that would make it easier, but I think it has actually constrained them further, because when times are good like they are right now, instead of just being based on the current consumer price index, we're having to factor in prior years which may actually have not been as economically fruitful as the prior year. But that passed as well. Now, in 2014, there was a question on the ballot. That would have been a state election year, so it wasn't a city election. Again, a year when 2/3 of the Democratic state rep candidates from Manchester were elected. The question would have been to make it easier to override, and that failed. So the cap was adopted in a year when they elected Democrats. The loosening of the cap was defeated in a year that they elected 2/3 of the Democrats. So when you hear that this is a partisan thing and it's, it's Republican thing or conservative thing, I think the average taxpayer in Manchester wants the rate of growth of government constrained to some degree. So I'm sure this year you'll hear it again. Oh, the tax cap's awful. We can't get things done because of the cap. The simple truth is they can override. Certainly they can come up with the votes. They did it last year. They overrode in 2014. They overrode the tax and spending cap in 2016, and they did it again in 2018. Interestingly enough, never in an election year. So this is a city election year, so it'll be interesting to see what they do this time around. But anyways, back to that annual report. That was a report that was done in June of 2017, so it really only includes information that's full for a full year from 2008 to 2016. So keep that in mind as I talk about this. As you know, property taxes increase year after year. That's no secret. What some people, or what I realized, but I'm not sure if other people realize, is we're not actually getting more for those increased tax dollars. If anything, we're probably getting less. The school side of our tax bill goes up every year. We spend more and more on schools, even though we don't have more and more kids. If anything, our school population has declined significantly over the past couple decades. But yet we spend more and more every year on the schools. The city side is actually starting to go down because I think with the caps in place, because we're going up so much on the school side, we're tightening more on the city side, which in many cases is where the services that many of us see come from. So are we getting more for our money every year when we get a tax increase, or are we actually getting less? I'd like to believe that everything's becoming so efficient on the city side that is why we're spending less over there. But I don't really think that's the case. So one of the interesting things I found in this report is that it summarized the full-time equivalent employees. So not necessarily each full-time employee, but the equivalent of a full-time employee for the various departments. Many departments have had fewer full-time equivalents in 2016 than they did in 2018. Human Resources, interestingly enough, has more. I'm not sure how expanding human resource positions benefits the taxpayer. Can't see how that correlates to a direct service that the taxpayers benefit from. So cemetery care, that was down 20%. This is from 2008 to 2016. Parks maintenance was down 23%. Public Works administration increased, while street maintenance and construction was down, and refuse collection was up, as far as employees go. And drain and sewer repair was also down. So looks like we're beefing up Public Works hierarchy, the people working in the office, while we're maybe taking away people that are actually out there doing the repairs. In the water department, administration and financial is up, distribution and supply down. On the sewer end, their administration and financial remain flat, but their maintenance employees were also down. Health, library, and welfare were also down in the number of full-time equivalent employees. Now, on the police side, police officers are up 223 to 214, so an increase of 9. But they're down about the same number on the civilian side of the department, right? So I guess we've taken civilians, so I guess that would be dispatchers or administrative people, and converted those job positions, not the work itself, but the numbers, into police officers. Interestingly enough, the fire department lost more people than the police gained. So seeing all these numbers didn't exactly give me the warm and fuzzies. but maybe they make sense. Maybe somehow we need more administrative people, although I highly doubt that. I think most people, when you think about what the city service is, you want your trash picked up, you want the potholes repaired, you want the parks mowed, you want things that you can actually tangibly see. Having more people working in human resources probably is not something that people sit around their dinner table and say, I wish we would just increase human resources a bit. So what do all these people do year after year? You might wonder, what do all these city workers do? Well, I guess the police are making fewer arrests. I guess that's a good thing. There were 6,244 in 2008, down to 5,175 in 2016. That's a big jump. That's 1,000 arrests a year. I guess we could presume crime is just lower. That's what Dan said to me. Well, crime's lower. Or maybe we could presume that the police are doing such an awesome job patrolling that they've deterred crime in some way. Parking violations are also down. 51,612. That number alone. In 1 year, we handed out 51,612 parking violations. That's nuts. But that dropped. That went down to just over 43,000 in 2016. Traffic citations, again, cut almost in half. We had traffic citations almost 11,000 in 2008, down to just over 5,200 in 2016. We have the same number of cruisers. We have more unmarked police cars, fewer bikes for bicycle cops, and more canine units. So I don't know what combination of that is it the actual people and the climate in the community that's changed that's causing fewer arrests, or are police just not arresting enough people? I guess not enough. That's a terrible way to think about it. Is crime being unsolved? Is crime not being resolved? I don't know. I'm just going by this couple pages of numbers. Now, on the fire department side, calls answered in 2008 were 18,000, just over 18,000. In 2016, it was up over 6,000, like 6,500 to 24,471. I'm going to make a presumption that a lot of this has to do with the opioid and heroin overdoses, because one, the fire chief said fire calls are down, but his overall calls are obviously up. Interestingly enough, property loss is cut in half. $8.6 million in loss in 2008 to just over $4 million in property loss in 2016. So you would have to make a presumption. Well, you don't have to, I guess. I would make a presumption that the fire department, which is being trained, which really everybody thinks about putting out fires, is actually doing a different job. Or more than they used to. They're responding to emergency calls more than they are responding to fires. It's not that they're doing a lesser job, it's just a different job. And I think sometimes we have to look at, are we doing things the way we should? Are we hiring firefighters and expecting them to be EMTs when maybe we could be hiring EMTs to be EMTs? They also, fire inspections, I'm not sure what that entails. They nearly doubled from 822 to 1501. Interesting, right? Manchester seems to collect a lot less trash, but more recycling. We have 55 individual, this is just some data I thought was interesting, 55 individual parks in Manchester and the public golf course. This includes 55 baseball softball diamonds, 24 soccer fields, 2 indoor ice rinks, 25 basketball courts, 5 tennis courts, 3 public swimming pools, 1 public beach, splash pad, 20 parks in that 55 with playground equipment, 6 with a pickleball court, which I cannot tell you what a pickleball court is. I don't know what pickleball is. I'm not originally from New Hampshire, so it must be a New Hampshire thing. Pickleball, is that the thing with the ball on the chain on the pole? I don't know. Somebody email me at manchtalk@gmail.com and tell me what pickleball is. And we have an 18-hole disc golf course now. People seem to be ice skating as much as they did in 2008. They swim in the pools as much as they did in 2008. Golfing seems to have gone down a bit. We also have 8 walking trails in Manchester, which I'm very thankful for. And big shout out to Frank over there on the west side, who does an amazing job making sure that the rail trail that runs from the Fisher Cats Arena to Goffstown has a path all winter long. I saw him out working on the stretch outside near my house on Parker Street on Sunday when the weather was not on Sunday, must have been on Saturday because Sunday was the snowy day. But he was out there doing his community service, his voluntary community service. It seems, based on these numbers, fewer people are using libraries than they used to, which really isn't a surprise with the amount of data that's available on the internet. We've added almost 8 miles of roads and 7 traffic lights in the past decade. And you might be thinking, who cares? Who cares about all this stuff? Well, you should care, because you pay for all of this stuff. You pay for the roads, you pay for the bridges, you pay for the parks, you pay for the fire, you pay for the police, you pay for the library, you pay for the skating rinks. It's all your money. You, the taxpayers in Manchester, are the ones who pay for all this stuff. So when that city budget goes up $6 or $7 million a year, you should certainly care what it's being spent on. Sadly, well, not sadly, a lot of it's spent on the schools. We constantly hear schools need work, schools need work, schools need work, more money, more money, more money, teachers, 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 all these things. But I think we're not seeing an increase in student population. So we're spending millions more every year on the schools, and at what point will our schools be complete? In just the past 4 years, this is interesting, I thought, city employee benefits have increased $4 million in the 4 recent years. $4 million. That's not raises, that's benefits. Education costs went up $8 million in 4 years, while money being spent on highways and streets went down. Retirement costs, this is the kicker, because nobody ever wants to talk about this. Nobody ever wants to talk about changing things. Retirement costs in just 1 year, from 2018 to 2019, the budget went up nearly $1 million. And that's not $1 million worth of anything that you're getting extra services for. That's just your tax dollars paying for something that we used to have. Nearly $20 million every tax year goes just to retirement payments. $20 million. Yet we can still continue to promise pensions to new employees rather than making the decision that starting tomorrow or starting January 1st of next year or starting at some point in time, we're going to switch all new employees to defined benefit retirement versus defined contribution. Or I switch it back. We're going to switch them from defined benefit to defined contribution. So basically from a pension system to a 401k system. It's much more manageable, it's much more predictable, and it's much more reliable for the taxpayers in the city. So that was my fun times with that annual report. I'll get some information. Maybe I'll see if John DePietro will come on the show with me and we can talk about school budgets. Although I know there's lots of shows out here that talk. Rich Gerard talks about school budgets. A lot of people talk about school budget. I like to talk about the city side of things. Enough of that. Manchester Makerspace over there on Old Granite Street, which is right across from the SNU Arena. They do some intro classes to a variety of things. They've got classes coming up on intro to upholstery. There's an intro to TIG welding. They also have an open house every Monday at 6 p.m. You should go check them out. If you're a creative person and don't have all the tools that you need to do something, perhaps you can buy a membership over there for a month or two and work on your project over there. Again, open house is Monday nights, 6 p.m. You can find more information at manchestermakerspace.org. Sadly, read in the news that Amoskeag Fishways is closing their Learning and Visitor Center, which is unfortunate because it was such a fun thing. Because Eversource, which funded them in part, sold the dam, so their funding has gone away. They will be open seasonally. I'm not sure exactly what those days are. I think for the fish ladder, so probably early spring, like March, April, maybe to June or something like that. But it says on their website that you can check back soon to see what their hours would be. AmoskeagFishways.org. That's a loss. That's a great place to take little kids and whatnot, and big kids like myself. Also closing is Purely Wood on Elm Street, a great furniture store. They're located at 293 Elm Street. They announced that they're moving on to different ventures in their life, closing this chapter and opening another. But their clearance sale is going on now. Again, 293 Elm Street, Purely Wood Furniture. You can visit their website at purelywood.com. And while you're over there on Elm Street, check out Antiques on Elm. That's a great antique co-op type store. Huge. They've expanded. Just tons of fun to walk around and find some neat things for your home. Also next week, on Wednesday, March 20th at 6 p.m. at Murphy's Tap Room, the Manchester GOP has their monthly meeting. We'd love to have some conservative, Republicans, independents, like-minded people come join us. Again, Murphy's Tap Room, Wednesday, March 20th at 6 p.m. You can get more information about that at manchestergop.com. As I always say, if you have any ideas for shows, you have any questions about what I talked about today, if you can tell me what pickleball is, you can email me at, excuse me, ManchTalk@gmail.com. I love to hear from folks. You can also follow me on Facebook at ManchTalk. Otherwise, I'm fingers crossed that the weather picks up as the week goes on and some of the snow goes away and we're trudging along towards spring. That's all I have for this week. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next week. Bye.